Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to Divination Death Witch. I'm Rain, and today I thought it was about time that I made a video about things that I wish that I knew before I began my journey into witchcraft. I have been a practicing witch for almost 30 years at this point, and I have grown and learned so much over those decades of practice. I don't think I've really given my origin story, so maybe this episode is a good place to give you the TLDR version of that. I was raised in a Wesleyan United Methodist church. Loads of religious trauma we could unpack there, but maybe we'll make that into its own episode later if you're interested. From a young age, I just really wasn't buying Christian theology. My very religious grandmother about had a stroke the night she was tucking me into bed. I was about 5-ish, and I said to her that, or something along the lines of, I don't believe in the devil. I think people just do bad things on their own. But I was pretty sheltered from religious diversity in my younger years. It wasn't until later that I would even discover there were religions other than various forms of Christianity, which meant that I tried my damnedest to be a good little Christian girl when I was young because I didn't know there were any other options. Well, not consciously. My father's side of the family has some ancestry that was animistic. Though he had embraced and pushed Christianity, he still held on to and raised me with some of those beliefs, despite our church's condemnation of them. He taught me that all of nature speaks to you. You just have to know how to listen. If you've been around, you know that I do believe in reincarnation. And looking back now, I think my childhood showed some evidence that perhaps I was a cunning woman in a past life as well. When I'd play with the other girls in the neighborhood, they'd be the princesses and I'd be the witch. But I wasn't the old hag we saw offering Snow White the apple, nor was I Glenda the Good Witch from the Wizard of Oz. No, I was a woman in a cottage mixing together potions to heal the princesses, lift curses, or to help them find true love. Dial liquid hand soap was popular back then. I'd save the empty bottles and fill them with the leaves of clovers and their red and white blossoms, as well as English plantain blossoms, which we called rat tails, and mix them with water. Not only would I make mud pies with our clay-filled soil, but I'd also make pretend healing poultices for the princesses who accidentally got scorched by the dragon as their imaginary prince was trying to save them. 7th grade is when I cut all ties with the church. I did try going to a couple of different friends' churches with them for youth events, but none of them showed themselves to be fundamentally different than the church that I was raised in. I considered myself agnostic for a brief transitory period, but by the end of 8th grade, I identified as an atheist. When I was 16, I began reading tarot, and I've told that story, so we'll just leave it at that for this episode. Despite identifying as agnostic and then atheist, I was still spiritual. I knew there was more to the universe than what we see with our physical eyes. I had also been interacting with spirits since I was very young, so I knew that death wasn't the end, that there was more after death, and I began to learn about the idea of reincarnation. I also read and learned about Taoism during this time, and Buddhism, Hinduism, and Judaism. I knew there was more, but I didn't know what. I had yet to be exposed to terms and concepts that would organize and explain my experiences and philosophies. Then, my freshman year of college, I discovered paganism and witchcraft. As trite as it may sound, I didn't convert. I came home. I would never take back or undo my journey into witchcraft, but there are still some things I wish I had known before I began or as I began my practice. Let me know in the comments below which of these things you wish you had known before you began practicing witchcraft, or if you're just beginning your witchcraft journey, which of these resonates with you the most right now. I'm beginning to put more witchcraft content up on the channel and over on my Patreon, where we offer both free and paid memberships. Let me know what kind of witchcraft topics you'd like me to create content on by leaving a comment down below or joining our Haunt Discord server and connecting with me there. Links are in the description box below. If you're enjoying this content, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you'd like to book a reading with me or a mentorship, you can do so through my website. Now, here are 13 things I wish that I knew before I began my witchcraft journey. 1. That even if you are part of a circle or a coven or other group structure, at the end of the day, when you boil it all down to its essence, witchcraft is ultimately a solitary practice. I think it's fair to say that most modern witches operate mostly, if not solely, on their own. Sometimes we do find groups that we practice with and we do group activities and workings with, but most of our witchcraft we practice on our own. When I first started practicing, I wanted a coven so bad, and I thought that I'd find a group of other witches and we'd become besties and we'd be inseparable for the rest of our lives. That's not usually the case for a few reasons. The first is that while there are more of us than you think, once you move outside of a big city, we're more spread out, which makes it hard for us to find each other. And even when we do find each other, it can be harder to actually get together. Another reason is that even if we do find a group, many of them tend to run their course over time, if you will. This doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that group, but people move away or get busy, or the group just kind of fizzles out due to day-to-day lives. Just because you find a local group doesn't mean that you'll vibe with the local group or that they'll vibe with you. It's not a knock on you or on the group. Sometimes the witch and the group just aren't the right fit for each other, which is okay. Then there is the unfortunate truth that there is always a lot of divisiveness and dumpster fire level drama within the witchcraft community. Some groups are unfortunately toxic. I've experienced various examples of a myriad of these scenarios. My best experiences and longest lasting as far as participating in a group were with a UU that had a high ratio of pagans or folks that were pagan friendly. Unfortunately, it wasn't close to me, so getting there was difficult even when I was within distance, and after a few years I did wind up moving away from that area. I found another UU a little bit of a ways from where I had moved to, but it actually had a cups group, and I was so excited I thought that I would try to make the effort to make the commute to that group, but they didn't allow children at their services, and I didn't have childcare at the time, so I never got to participate in that group. And I understand the choice that they made. I'm not upset with that group whatsoever. I was just kind of sad that I didn't get to go and have that experience. Did run my own circle for a little while, and that was a lot of fun and a very positive experience. But again, life just kind of happened. One of the members passed away, another one moved away, and then I wound up moving away. And so the group just kind of naturally had to disband because of that. My worst experience was with a local online group that I joined through Discord. Now, not local to where I am currently. They were a group of Norse pagans that were local to where I was living at the time. While I'm not a Norse pagan, I was interested in learning more about the Norse path and pantheon, and I wanted to connect with other local pagans of any flavor. It turned out that the two men who owned the Discord server and the online group were actually convicted felons and misogynists. I ended up having a confrontation with them because I dared to question something they said and sort of challenge them to cite their source and prove their point. Now, I'm not going to get into all of the details there, but it was really bad. It was really scary. It turned out, as I understand it, that these people actually were violent offenders. And while there were some people in that online group that sort of came to my aid and kind of tried to tell these guys, hey, perhaps you're out of line, perhaps you're going too far, they didn't even want to listen to those voices. So in the end, the experience was so bad, and I don't scare easily, but I did not trust these two men, and knowing that they were local to my area just made me very untrusting of them, and that there wouldn't be some sort of in-person retaliation for my having the audacity to question them. I did immediately leave that group and blocked that group, and now I refuse to have anything to do with Norse paganism. And that's a personal choice on my part. In my personal lived experience, that the distasteful or unpleasant experiences that I've had with groups and communities in paganism generally involved Norse pagans or people who claimed to be Norse pagans. And so I just don't feel that the Norse pagan space is a space that is for me personally. I know individual Norse pagans that I am friends with, and I love them to death, and they are amazing people. But as far as that community goes, this is, like I said, some groups you'll vibe with, some you won't. For me personally, Norse paganism is not a space for me as an individual witch. Mean that Norse paganism is bad as a whole. It just means that my lived experiences tell me that is not a space for me personally. The moral of the story is that I've had amazing group experiences, and I will continue to seek out groups that I vibe with, and I will continue to have amazing group experiences throughout my life. But I've also had not great ones, and I've had that one dangerous group encounter. So just be mindful of that. Understand that not every group is for you. You are not for every group. You will have amazing experiences. You will have disappointing experiences. But at the end of the day, you are the witch that you travel the road with from beginning to end. It is, at the end of the day, a solitary practice, even if you do belong to a group. Because groups come and go, you are the constant in your practice. Number 2, that witchcraft is a commitment to lifelong learning. No matter how much you learn, there is always more to learn. Your studies are never finished. When I started my path, I thought there would be a beginning, middle, and an end to my learning. I don't know why, but I thought it would be like learning how to play Uno, I guess, something along those lines. I guess I just had this idea that, like, here's a finite set of instructions for how to do witchcraft. Now go forth and craft. I don't know why I thought that, but I'm glad that I was wrong. As someone who loves to learn, I'm glad that for my entire life, I will be learning new things when it comes to witchcraft. Number 3, my witchcraft should not be a carbon copy of anyone else's. It is meant to be uniquely my own, based on my lived experiences, interests, and talents. Again, witchcraft isn't Uno, where there's a defined set of steps and minimal variation between how one person and the next plays the game. Our witchcraft will not look exactly like any other witches. Sure, maybe you'll do candle spells the same way as Witch X, but the rest of your practice will differ wildly, or any variation on this. In the beginning, I thought I had to do things exactly as the witch I was learning it from did, but I can take all of my learning and blend it together. I don't have to do anything exactly as someone else does it in order to get results. In fact, I get better results if I combine all the knowledge I have together and do it in my own way. Number 4, that no matter how long ago you began your religious deconstruction, vestiges of that toxicity will rear their head from time to time. I'm 45. I walked away from the church at like 13, 14-ish. I've done my deconstruction. I don't subscribe to any of Christianity's theology or dogma, and yet every now and then a piece of my religious trauma will surface, and I will have to do the work to process it and move past it. That shit is insidious and tries to hang on as long as it can, and you can't be surprised when 20, 30 years down the road, some little nugget of it decides to show its head again. Number 5, that it takes time to find your path within witchcraft, and it is perfectly okay for your craft and beliefs to grow, evolve, and even change over the years. You are, hopefully, going to grow and evolve as a person, so it's only right that your craft should too. Under this heading, I also want to emphasize that it's okay for you to say that something under the witchcraft umbrella just isn't for you personally. It's okay if you try something or try to practice a specific aspect of witchcraft for years and years and years, and eventually you get to a point where you're like, you know what, this just isn't right for my path, and then let it go. You don't have to keep doing something just because others have made you feel like you need to do it, or even if you've made yourself feel like you need to do it. Know that it is okay, even after years and years of doing something, to say, you know what, I've changed my mind about this. Number 6, that you don't need the expensive tools, fancy accessories, or hard to find magical ingredients that you may see in books or in other witches' social media posts. Now for me, when I started, social media wasn't really a thing, but I definitely struggled in the beginning of my practice as a broke-ass college student who couldn't afford all the things witchcraft books told me that I needed in order to be a witch. While material things can be great aids or additions to your practice, only use what you have access to and flows with your practice. How I broke out of the mindset that I needed expensive tools and hard to find ingredients that I just didn't have access to was by learning to work magic on the astral. That was my first step of breaking out of that. There's so many more ways to break out of that, but just my personal experience, that was my first step into realizing that I didn't have to have those. Maybe you'll work on the astral as well. Or maybe you'll use only tools you can craft yourself. Or maybe a combination of things. Maybe you'll thrift tools. Maybe you can splurge on this tool or that, but then other tools you either do without, find a workaround for, or find a cheaper way to access that tool. Magic is in the witch. Your tools should enhance your magic, not dictate it. Number 7, that it's okay to mess up. It's okay to not get a spell perfect, and it's okay if a spell doesn't work. We're human, and while there are practitioners out there who will tell you it's the end of the world and people will die if you get it wrong, that's not usually the case. Maybe the outcome won't be quite what you expected, but if you really mess up the spell, the most likely outcome is that nothing will happen. Nothing will come from it. Now, there's a lot of different reasons why a spell might not work, but here specifically I'm talking about if you mess up or make a mistake in your casting. There are witches who talk about the fact that magic takes the path of least resistance, just like water. And there is definitely truth in that. But the example that I have heard since I started into witchcraft back in the 90s says that you have to build all sorts of caveats into your spell work or bad things will happen. And there is one scenario that you will hear over and over again given as an example for this lesson, if you will. The example goes, if you do a money spell, the path of least resistance is for one of your loved ones, or maybe for one of your loved ones to die and leave you an inheritance. So they teach that you have to put in all these caveats about how you will get the money in order for the spell to work without negative consequences. Now, if you want to work your spell like that, you want to put in all those caveats, and that works for you, by all means, do that. I'm not telling you not to. All I'm saying is that in my nearly 30 years of practice, no one has ever dropped dead and left me an inheritance or money or assets when I've done a money spell. I've gotten the money, but no one's ever dropped dead for it. And I've never known a witch who did a money spell and then got the money by someone they loved dropping dead and leaving them the money they were looking for. I'm not guaranteeing you that it's never happened in the existence of humanity, but I feel like this is more of an urban legend and a control tactic for people who want you to practice witchcraft their way. Practice magic responsibly. Do your best when you're casting your spells. Give it thought and consideration and all of that. But also know that if you mess up or make mistakes, it's not the end of the world. In fact, while witchcraft can be very serious business, don't take yourself too seriously when you're practicing, and don't keep yourself from learning and growing and practicing out of fear that something horrific is going to happen if you make a mistake. Again, the most likely outcome if you really, really mess it up is that nothing is going to happen because your intent and your actions are not in alignment. So more than likely, you're going to wind up with absolutely bupkis. Number 8, that doing the inner work is of the utmost importance, whether you are a deist or not. Whether you follow some organized or loosely organized type of religion or not. Your spell work and your life will go much better and much farther if you're doing your inner work. And this is something that is lifelong. It is never done. We are works in progress. This means showing up as the best version of yourself that you can each and every day. It means shedding outdated or faulty paradigms and self-limiting beliefs, and making sure that you're recognizing and processing your emotions. Just to name a few things in this category: showing up as the best you, striving to be the best version of yourself, and striving to do better than you did the day before is not just something that is good for you as a person in your Monday life, but it also will have positive impacts on your witchcraft as well. Number 10, that it is essential to challenge your own beliefs from time to time. It is a good practice to examine what you believe about witchcraft and magic and spellcasting, and see if those beliefs or preconceived notions really do still hold up with where you are now in your journey and what you've learned up to this point. It's a good idea, on occasion, to listen to what a witch or two that you don't usually agree with has to say, and then examine their beliefs and yours through a critical lens. It's not likely that you're suddenly going to agree with them, but it helps you to look at your own paradigms more critically and really refine and solidify for yourself where you stand on something. Also, if you do this on a regular basis, you will find at various points throughout your journey that something that you once believed, that you learned from a mentor or an influencer that you like and resonate with, that maybe that little speck of advice or that practice, it fit you at that point in time when you learned it, but it no longer resonates and you've been holding on to it out of habit and duty and tradition. And it's now a point in your journey, in your practice, where it's time to let that go and replace it with something new, or maybe not let it go completely, but refine it or look at it in a new way. Number 11, that our mentors, be they one-on-one teachers, authors, YouTubers, witch talk influencers, or witches on other forms of social media, are all people too. Don't put any teacher up on a pedestal. We are all human, and as such, we all have our flaws. You're not going to agree with any one particular mentor 100% on everything, nor should you. This is part of why I highly recommend that you have several mentors in various formats. Diversity is a good thing here, and you want to see your mentors as people. You want to see them for who they truly are, not who you would have them be. Number 12, that witchcraft isn't for everyone. Not everything is for everyone, and that's okay. In fact, I'd say that more than just the casual witchcraft that we see practiced in our society as a whole, like wishing on birthday candles, is honestly not for the mainstream. Witchcraft is not all love and light. It is not necessarily the threefold law unless you happen to be Wiccan or choose to follow that Wiccan rule. And not everyone has the stomach, if you will, for witchcraft on a deep, non-surface, superficial level. Nothing wrong with people who don't have it in them. There's nothing wrong with people who witchcraft just isn't for. It doesn't make them less than or bad in any way. It is just a fact. Witchcraft is not for everyone. Not everyone is meant to practice witchcraft more than that superficial cultural level that we see in practices like blowing out birthday candles and wishing on them. In my experience over the years, I find that most people who try out witchcraft tend to leave after a while, partly because it is work. Witchcraft is work. Spell work is work. And it's not a quick fix for your problems. Again, in my observation, these are just my observations. I can't give you any data or hard facts on this, but in my observation, the reason why someone tries witchcraft will be the determining factor on whether or not witchcraft is ultimately for them and if they will stick with it. There are exceptions to the rule, but witchcraft isn't for everyone, and that's okay. I tend to find that people who get into witchcraft looking for witchcraft to be a quick fix to all of their problems without doing things like learning and educating themselves, that lifelong learning that we talked about, without doing the inner work and all of that, they tend to run in witchcraft circles for a hot minute and then they tend to leave one way or another. And that's okay. It's not meant to be for everyone. While anyone and everyone can do witchcraft, not anyone and everyone is meant to do witchcraft on a deeper level. And lastly, number 13, that it's okay to take breaks. Witchcraft is work. I've already said that. And just like we need a break from our 9-to-5 job, we need breaks from witchcraft too. Listen to your body, mind, and spirit. Practice when it's right for you and take breaks when it's right for you to do so. Don't think that you have to be doing spell work and being knee deep in some sort of witchcraft practice every minute of every single day. It's okay to take breaks. In fact, it's good for your practice. It's good for you to walk away for a minute, take a breather, and then come back at things refreshed and feeling rejuvenated and having that passion for witchcraft again, where you're not feeling like it's a chore, you're not feeling like it's something you are obligated to do or have to do. It is something you want to do. So always remember that it is okay to take breaks from your practice. That's what I have for you today, my lovelies. I hope that you have enjoyed this. I hope you have found it helpful. and inspirational. And until I see you again, blessings to you wherever your journey finds you.